Okay, so all of you heard the basic topic. We'd like to see and reflect on the toll that this war has. Each of you has his own perspective on it due to the work that you do. I want to start with the Deputy Minister of Economy. I guess you would give us the most data on what would be the losses that we have, both in humanitarian sector and infrastructural sector. Please. It should work. Yeah, yeah, perfect.
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you. I'm pleased to be here in this event. It's really important to draw attention, especially to such spheres as humanitarian crisis and the social impacts of the war. They're inevitably hurting the society and the economy as well. So it is obvious that the war has changed us, right? And so you could see the dramatic changes on the east of Ukraine. You can see the massive relocations of the enterprises and the businesses from the east to the west, where the government is actually providing the due support together with our transportation partner, Ukrzaliznytsia, was really helping a lot, you know, and providing the free transportation and working closely with the mayors, with the regional administrations. I know that the mayor is also present in this event, so they can probably also comment separately on who has moved from where to where and what benefits these companies are getting and what support they're getting. But the human capital is probably the most vulnerable piece of this war, because traditionally it has been a very solid pillar that was supporting the Ukrainian economy, and because our talented people were driving not only Ukrainian economy, but were also driving the Eastern European economy and were integrated globally. All the industries have suffered, and the economy, well, we had some forecasts dated on the September this year, and so based on those, the economy was supposed to shrink at least 30%. I think it's going to shrink more because of these recent missile attacks hitting the energy infrastructure. We're going to have some final numbers, I guess, pretty soon, but they're not super promising, I'm afraid. At the same time, all the industries got hurt. The only industry that didn't get hurt is the IT sector. So these guys actually grew. They grew at least 15%, and we expect that the net exports for the IT services are going to end up with 7.5 billion till the end of this year. This is because of the remote and distant work, because they're able to be engaged in numerous processes globally, not even being in Ukraine. Some of them left Ukraine, but still continue working for Ukraine, paying taxes in Ukraine due to the good infrastructure, taxation infrastructure, and enterprise accommodation infrastructure, like such as DSCT that was arranged by the Ministry of Digital Transformation. But these guys are good. They're relatively okay. Whilst the other actually really suffered. So I'm going to throw some recent numbers at you. I try to be not too dull on that. So before the war, we had the statistics that 12 million people were engaged in economic activity. So they were all like paying 12 million people. Yeah. The recent number that we have is 8.64 million. So we have a drop. So that was 12.04, now it's 8.64. So we have at least 3.4 million drop in this number. 9.8 million people were actually employed. So they were employees of some other big companies. The rest were the private entrepreneurs. This number has dropped to 7.35, so 2.4 million people lost their job as employees. The small and medium enterprises have already laid off 1 million people at least, and it's expected that the people who are living below the minimum, which is like 2.4 thousand hryvnias, is going to be 70%, which is enormous.
And 2,400 hryvnias is less than how many euros?
I don't know, it's like 60 euros.
60 euros.
Yeah. We also have a statistics of the companies that suffered from the war specifically. So in the context of the employees that they have, so 17% of the companies have employees that actually died because of the war. 11% have employees that were found, so they are lost, so nobody can find them, reach them, find any connection with them. Another 17% have employees that had physically hurt. Luckily, they're alive, but at least they suffer. 27% of people work in the conditions where their salary is dropping every month. 20% of people were forcibly sent for vacation because their employers cannot afford themselves to upkeep the salaries and keep them running. And then, as I said, the 20% of people were fully laid off, so they fully lost their job. It's expected that the unemployment rate will be up to 50. Well, actually, it's a bold number, and it's like more like people who are losing the economic activity and no longer engaged in business will be up to 52%. It's a dramatic.
52%.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a huge number, but still, we're hoping to balance this and compensate it to some extent. So the average salaries also dropped dramatically, and it fell at least 10%, which is really like if you look at the absolute numbers, that was not enormous, and now it's even less in the course that the currency exchange is already devalued.
Alexander, let's summarize this with your own perspective. So there's plenty of data that supports the idea that the loss is absolutely immense. 30+% of economy drop. 52% of people whether lost a job or lost economic activity. Plenty have fled. Plenty are unemployed and will not get this job in the nearest future. And just maybe in 1 or 2 words, your own perspective, how is that for you? And then I'm going to jump to other questions to other panelists.
What the government is currently doing is that we're trying to stop this, and we also see that a lot of people have actually migrated from the country, and they're looking for some better life in Poland, Europe, and other countries of the world. And it is our goal to bring them back, right? So we do understand that this is very, very tough objective, but we're at least trying to do so. We're constantly establishing some government support programs, such as e-work. This is e-robota, that's e-robota. The program envisages the provision of the grants to the enterprises in numerous fields, the processing enterprises, the agricultural development, the business enterprises. Like you can get the grant for gardening, you can get the grant for greenhouses. Unfortunately, we also do this in the conditions of the budget scarcity, and we don't have like huge amount to satisfy all the demands. But one of the key requirements to get the grant is actually the working places, the jobs that you create. So the companies that create more jobs, they will be preferred, like they are more likely to get the grant. So that's how we try to stimulate the working places and social activity back again. So this is like one of the things that we're focusing on.
So the situation is really dire, but I see that the government is doing what it can do through the knowledge of its deputies, ministers, and the businesses who are still doing work in Ukraine, and also international help, of course, to which we get with Mr. Juha in a moment. Oleg, I wanted to jump to you right now. Thank you for the mic. I know that you're personally very attached to the losses of kids in Ukraine, and we've talked about that and before the panel. We can't disclose the number that we lose on a battlefield, of course, and we don't really know exactly how many people have lost of civilians in a way. But then we have plenty of other humanitarian data that you want to share with us, and also share how the reconstruction Gov.ua works. Recovery Gov.ua works, yeah.
Good morning. It's a pleasure for me to be here among you, distinguished guests, dear partners. And yeah, we were talking and discussing, like, starting from yesterday. I had so many of you coming and with some nice words of support and eagerness to help and to be actively involved and engaged in helping us to win, because this is our common victory, actually. And yeah, we are paying high price, enormous price. And as we said, still the numbers have to be studied and disclosed yet. But we're talking about children. What we do know that as for today, Russia has killed 443 kids, and more than 11,000 have been forcibly deported.
To Russia.
To Russia, yeah. Because we are actively engaged in this process because Poland, as I told you, the support from Poland is multilateral. And actually, we have a huge support on taking kids to Poland to keep them in a safe place. And yeah, as I said, like, for us, for our soldiers, brave defenders, it's really important to know that kids and their closest relatives are in safe place. So actually, what can we say is that more than 7 million people have crossed the border, Ukrainian and Polish border. But now what we see and what we were witnessing, more and more Ukrainians were coming back. We saw that a lot of Ukrainians were located here in Poland, close to their homes. And they did not just came to stay in a safe place. Just from the beginning, they have actively involved in helping and bringing closer our victory. And that's why we would like to, again, express our gratitude to the government of the Republic of Poland, because they have secured all the conditions, all the necessary conditions. And actually, when we are talking about human loss, it's not about just lives, it's about professionals, it's about the experience. And with the help of the government of Poland, we have initiated and created and launched the website platform for searching jobs according to their educations. Because the main message, common message, was we are trying to preserve the high level of education and professional skills in order to be used for rebuilding Ukraine. And I would also, if you allow me, because I had so many questions and suggestions from our partners and colleagues, that how to help, how to be involved in rebuilding Ukraine. And sometimes somebody is afraid of maybe some bureaucracy or a long way if you are addressing embassy, but please be sure we are open for a cooperation. But you can also have the other option. If you help me, yeah, there's the website, recovery.gov.ua. You can find actually the actual maps of damages. You can find the ongoing projects for rebuilding Ukraine. And if you've got some bright idea, your own idea, please, you could address. There is a really good team of professionals that are coming back to you with the quick response. So actually, despite the fact that this barbaric war and these attacks from Russia cause losses to Ukraine, what we do, we are working all out every day around the clock to preserve, the high level of experience, of quality of labor workers, and to, let's say, today is 288th day of the Russian invasion. The whole world wouldn't be so sure in the beginning.
That is true.
That's the miracle we are doing all together. And that's why now, after missile attacks on Ukraine, we have not noticed the surge of people flowing through the border. Because we are in constant contact with our Polish partners in order to be able to provide them like shelter,
Understood.
warm places, and as always, the levels of support is really high. And you know what? And like last week, we had the meeting of Polish government with the ambassadors that are accredited in Warsaw. And they said, you know what? Those brave Ukrainians are not leaving the country. So please, now, get involved. There are some countries and partners that find some maybe excuses, maybe like
We'll get
something
to that.
why they cannot provide us with weapons, yeah? Because due to the fact that legislation or maybe some political situation or regional situation is not good for helping Ukraine. But now, like additionally to their statements, they could help us with rebuilding the energy infrastructure.
Yeah.
So if not weapons, you're welcome to show and prove that not only statements, but real help for our economy.
While we were on the way to Rzeszów by car from Vienna, we've seen how many trucks were having the electrical facilities on that coming towards the border of Ukraine. And so what I've heard right now, the economic and infrastructural overview of how dire the situation is, and some of the actions that we're doing, the humanitarian situation, partially we discussed with you, Oleg, and we've seen the loss of kids and those who've been deported. But also what we've seen that more than 7 million Ukrainians have crossed the border towards Europe, and some of them have already left to Ukraine and remained there during the immense attacks on the energy infrastructure. And here what I want to jump to our European colleague in here, Juha, you're heading the unit of the EU's humanitarian aid for Ukraine as well, in the region. And you've been seeing this all along, everything that we've been going through in the last 9 months. And I guess you've had not only the data, but also a personal experience of what have surprised you. What was your personal lesson in these last 9 months, please?
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting also a representative of the European Commission here. So indeed, I'm Juha Auvinen. I'm heading the Eastern Neighborhood Department of DG ECHO in the European Commission. And since you mentioned the word personal, I will start by saying that my father was an IDP. He was an internally displaced person in Finland.
Wow.
In 1944, when the Soviet Union attacked Finland, and he had to escape to the Finnish side, and of course Finland at that stage lost part of its territory, Karelia, to Russia. And I really hope this will not happen here, and I trust that it will not happen. But here in the case of Ukraine, but just to say that I'm also having a lot of personal sympathy for the situation as it stands. And what we have been doing from the European Commission side from the beginning is to deliver emergency humanitarian aid inside Ukraine, but also in Moldova. There are many refugees that have fled to Moldova. In addition, we have been supporting Ukraine and also Poland and the European countries with in-kind assistance through the EU civil protection mechanism. So we have two different branches, the humanitarian aid branch and the civil protection branch. And humanitarian aid provides assistance through our humanitarian partners, meaning the United Nations, the Red Cross family, and international non-governmental organizations. And civil protection mechanism provides in-kind assistance from the European countries, including Poland, but also all European countries have actually provided in-kind assistance to Ukraine. So I will throw just one figure out there, and this is 17.7 million people in Ukraine need humanitarian assistance as it stands. So it's a staggering figure, and this is the population we are trying to help. But I should say that we are doing it really in support of the Ukrainian government, which is doing commendable efforts in providing assistance themselves. So we always say we are there to help the Ukrainian government to support their people, because the government has been active since the very beginning, and its efforts have really been commendable. So what we have done is to come in support. In terms of support, currently, winterization, building winterized shelter, for example, is of key importance. This is where we are trying to help. The Russian missile attacks have badly destroyed civilian infrastructure, so they are using these attacks as a weapon of war, on attacking civilians. Health support, support to education, also cash assistance, food assistance, all sorts of assistance is necessary. So basically, we are facing a remarkable humanitarian crisis, which is unprecedented in the European soil, and we are trying to help the Ukrainian government to provide help for its citizens.
You have 17.7 million people, 6 million people who are in need of humanitarian support. This is immense, and I'm curious, the resources that you have and the resources that the allies provide and donators and others, how many out of this 17 million people can you really help?
So we have been able to support, again, through our humanitarian partners, over 13 million people in Ukraine. So that's a big amount. Of course, that still means that we have not been able to support everybody. But this is basically, I think, an important achievement. We have given so far 485 million in humanitarian assistance alone to our operations in Ukraine. And this is also an amount which is unprecedented, and it has been mobilized since the beginning of this year. Mind you, we were also supporting Ukrainians since 2014 already. So we have been in the country since 2014, helping the vulnerable Ukrainians that have suffered from the war. We shouldn't forget that this is a major attack that's happening now, but since 2014 there has been a humanitarian crisis.
Thank you for mentioning that. This is important to distinguish that this war has been here since 2014. One more thing I will add from you, and then I'll jump to Serhiy here. What is the type of this humanitarian aid? What is that the 17.6 million Ukrainians are needing and that you provide? What type of aid?
So this aid is basically consisting of refurbishment, rehabilitation of schools, of shelter. I mentioned the winterization assistance in particular. This is of particular importance. I mean, we are now entering into minus temperatures, and with the destruction of the civilian infrastructure, lack of heating, it is essential to provide assistance to winterization. And generators, heaters, I mean, these are very concrete examples also the type of support that we are providing, including also through the civil protection mechanism that I mentioned from European countries. Generators, heaters, this is of vital importance. But also support to the health system, to education, and as I mentioned, cash assistance is also important because it also prepares people to prepare for the winter. People know their own needs the best. I mean, this is perhaps a truism, but you give a certain amount to the people. If they need heating, they go and try means for heating their place. If they need food, they go and buy food. So cash assistance is an important form of assistance as well.
Understand. Thank you so much for detailed elaboration. Serhiy Leshenko, I have a question for you. And to those of you who don't know, Serhiy is the member of Supervisory Board of Ukrainian Railways, which is in Ukrainian called Ukrzaliznytsia, and Serhiy is wearing his actual task force suit today. Yeah, it's good to see you, Serhiy.
Thank you for inviting me. This is a new dress code of Ukraine after war started, because of our president, who is well known in the world because of his green t-shirts. In Ukrainian Railways, we also have our own dress code now. This is navy t-shirts.
A question that I have for you is this. Ukrainian Railways are incremental in the way how Ukraine is dealing with the war and with the humanitarian crisis. Definitely. What you guys done is absolutely amazing. It's not only evacuation of civil society, but also this is the relocation and evacuation and relentless 24/7 work to save people out of cities that are shelled, and then move the grain and move the other goods towards either Europe or whatever to safe places and to sell it. So you've been doing absolutely amazing work, and I've seen a few of your interviews and the CEO of Ukrzaliznytsia, and I'm just wondering what helps to be so resilient. What helps to be so 24/7 on top of things in such dire situation?
Thank you. Ukrainian Railways is a really unique company, I think even globally, because our network is one of the biggest in Europe, and Ukrainian Railways was and is very effective during the war, which what surprised a lot of people, because Ukrainian Railways was also very much criticized before war started, but after war started, it was one of the only few organizations not only survived, but doubled and tripled effort to help Ukrainians. And when everything was partly collapsed, Ukrainian Railways was working 24/7. And one of the examples, it's a well-known number that Ukrainian Railways evacuated 4 million people. And it's difficult to imagine how many it is, but I just read that it's, for instance, like population of country like Uruguay or Mongolia, and a lot of countries have less population than Ukrainian Railways evacuated during these few weeks of the first phase of the war. Ukrainian Railways evacuated 102,000 animals and pets, for instance. It's also difficult to imagine, but it's huge. And at the same time, Ukrainian Railways is suffering because our infrastructure is badly shelled. And despite the fact Ukrainian Railways restored a lot, just another example, since war started, 69 bridges were destroyed. It's crucial for railways to have bridges, because if there is no bridge, there is no transport connection. But 69 were destroyed and 20 restored. Some of them were restored during 29 days. This is famous bridge between Kyiv and Irpin, which was crucial to have transportation with Western Ukraine. The train from Kyiv to Poland goes through this bridge, and this bridge was restored during 29 days, and it's incredible. One of the supervisory board members is German, and he said that in Germany it will take maybe a few years. So that is why motivation of Ukrainian railway workers is very simple: to make the best for people of Ukraine. At the same time, there are 6,000 workers are now in the army of Ukraine as well, so they are also fighting on the front line. Ukrainian Railways is crucial for iron diplomacy. We call this when international partners of Ukraine travel to Ukraine by trains, and also it's crucial for trade. When Ukrainian ports were closed, all grain export went through Ukrainian Railways, which is not easy because of lack of infrastructure on the border, on the both sides of the border. But of course, Ukrainian Railways have a lot of challenges now and a lot of opportunities. We are really looking forward to implement our very strong agenda for future, very powerful agenda to have good transport corridor with Poland. We are building narrow gauge from Ukrainian border inside Ukraine. This year we complete a narrow gauge from border to Rava-Ruska, and we expect to have this narrow gauge to Lviv in very recent future, to have direct transportation between Lviv and Warsaw. We also have ambitions to go by our passenger rolling stock to Warsaw, and to have more options for Ukrainian citizens to travel from Ukraine to Poland. So a lot of ambitions and a lot of plans for the future, but of course to implement them we are looking forward for have partnership with our European partners here.
And so thank you for the data on the past and the cost of this war, and also some specific data on achievements through the war, but also I've heard your vision, to which we will get a bit further. I wanted to ask you, how many, if you can share this of course, how many trains have we lost? How many wagons have we lost? How many, these figures are important as well.
You know, it was also unique because when war started, we were, you know, so, let's say, confident that we have to work as fast as possible, that we saved all our American locos. A few years ago, Ukraine procured 30 American locos from General Electric. They were based mainly in Melitopol. It was the main depot for American locos for repair and fixing. And when the war started, all of them were successfully evacuated. And
really?
They were stored at least a few months ago on the western border of Ukraine. Now they are working because shortage of electricity push us forward to use diesel locos. So American locos saved. Also were saved our diesel passenger trains from Kryukovka, Ukrainian rolling stock producer. So more or less we saved a lot. At the same time we confiscated a lot of Russian wagons on our territory. So we have positive balance in this case. We have positive balance of rolling stock. And it's also very important that it would never happen without support of Ukrainian railway workers who worked 24/7 these critical days of first phase of the war.
The death toll for Ukrainian railways is how high? The death toll. How many of your colleagues have lost their lives through the work during the war?
So in general, we have 300 people died, unfortunately, and mainly these people who are called to the army. So they are soldiers.
So they died on the front line, but not during doing the service and being shelled.
Yeah, we have our special website called the Iron Family, Zalizna Rodina, and on this website we have like a counter of Ukrainian railway workers died during the war.
Juha, have you been to Ukraine since the war started? The large war, the big war started. Have you taken the Iron Train?
Actually, I was in charge of our support to Ukraine between 2016 and 2018. And then since 4.5 years I was working on Middle East. But I personally wanted to come back on Ukraine, and I started now in August. So I haven't been to Ukraine yet, but my idea is to travel this Saturday evening with a train to Ukraine for a short visit. I hope the Ukrainian trains work. I'm sure they will.
Yes, they will. And as far as you know, in Finland we have the same size of the railways as in Ukraine. It's only a few countries in Europe with Ukrainian size. So if Finland have some rolling stock which you are not going to use, we are always welcomed to send this as a humanitarian aid to Ukraine.
That's how the appeal works. So you would use the stage exactly to ask for what is needed.
But even with narrow gauge, we also looking forward to get more rolling stock because we gonna expand our narrow gauge network. As far as I know, we finished building narrow gauge to Kovel from border, and with big ambitious idea and plan to expand it to Kiev. But of course it will take years and it will take billions, but in general this idea is good, to have direct link with narrow gauge from Kiev to Warsaw with narrow gauge, so to double our abilities to transport passengers and
I'll get to that in a moment with how much money we need for that and how many years we need for that. But before that, I want to say that when former Ambassador Deshitsa was on stage and he was giving his speech later on, and a gentleman from Italy came to me and he said, tell him or those from embassy to invite new Italian government with the Iron Train in Ukraine so they could visit and witness what is happening. And so I'm just saying this out loud, so this is going to happen. Continuing with the second part of this panel, which would be the actual lessons that are valuable and could be spread around the world as lessons that you guys learned through the way. Oleg, what embassy of Ukraine to Poland did was absolutely immense, and I'm curious what you see with what kind of challenges that you guys have met. You think that the world might meet in future, but you think that you've been successful in this, and what were those lessons that you've learned and you can share with the audience?
Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you to Railways Ukrainian and to our government for coordinating the humanitarian support, because imagine one day you understand that you're having like about 10 or 20 airplanes with the humanitarian aid, and you just need somehow to deliver them to Ukraine immediately. So first of all, the main lesson is that when the enemy comes to your house, you have to be one united family. That's why from the first day we had these bright volunteers, NGOs, who came eagerly to help and support. And imagine, some had experience in logistics, some had experience in, customs, despite the fact that our colleagues are also always in contact. But in that time, at that crucial time, you need to build up capacities. So just do not refuse any suggestion to help, and don't be bureaucratic, because it's a war and you have to decide and act immediately. And then the whole government, the whole system, the whole country proved to be flexible. Actually, when we were at risk of being like a bottleneck, because the other neighboring country were not able to let in the humanitarian aid, or they were still in the process of how to organize everything, then the railways came, and just we were able to send every day huge amount of humanitarian aid, so needed, so long awaited in Ukraine. And what I wanted to say and to add regarding the human loss, like talking about people who are going abroad, we are not losing them. They are all our ambassadors, and actually it's due to them, to how do they communicate, how do they behave, that they do not just sit still, but working on an everyday basis, show the example. That's why everyone admires Ukrainians and want to help us, and because they know what we are doing. So the main lessons is, again, one of the main. These bright people are just like brilliance in the question of victory. Plus, they are also conducting information policy. They are realizing and conducting some great campaigns. If you could imagine what was the effect when we are opening the exhibition of the destroyed tanks in Warsaw. Yeah, and we were telling, because we are all together, we are stronger. And in that case, these tanks could be in capitals of Europe, just a destroyed exponents. Yeah, and I see we have another representatives of Ukrainian societies who are eager to set up museums also with these tanks, just to prove that when you are with Ukraine, when you are supporting, you have nothing to fear.
But if I put it in as a learning, I see that when the crisis/war or any type of crisis happens, what you need is a speed, less of bureaucracy, and that's your learning. And also you gave the opportunity for volunteers to arrive, and then you didn't really give them the rules, they self-organized. So you basically have created the infrastructure, or you just didn't do anything wrong about it.
You've got to have ability to adapt and to listen to.
Okay.
Because actually, I know our colleagues from government who are helping and with us, in contact with us on every second. We were adjusting and adapting protocols because we had to do that. Because like you just have few checkpoints and you have to decide like where medical, where humanitarian aid,
Understood.
and so on.
Tell me, and then I'm going to go to you, Oleksandr. How many Ukrainians are now in Poland? And how many have, since the big war started, have moved here?
So actually, as we said, official statistics, more than 7 million have crossed.
Yeah.
Some have stayed in Europe. The vast majority of like active was based in Poland. Then they have left.
Yep.
So for now, what we see, it's about like from 1.3 to 1.5 million Ukrainians. And actually, that counts for all who came just after the 24th of February. More than 600,000 are officially employed here. So they are still working, and they are helping on an everyday basis, officially working. And actually, that's why they are bettering and working on their skills so needed to rebuild country.
Understood.
After victory.
So I want to make a bridge out of this. So I've been following the statistics on how many Ukrainians have left Ukraine to Europe and received the temporary protection, like myself, let's say. And the number was growing immensely from April until around end of July. So it was almost 6.9 or 7 million Ukrainians, then 8. And then 6 of them would receive the temporary protection. And then the figure would drop in the August and September significantly. So the last time I saw, maybe a month ago, it was, like 4.7 million who are now residing or staying in Europe. So with this, I'm going to Oleksandr here. So losing Ukrainians physically from Ukraine to other countries, I would consider this as a loss of economical potential as well for Ukraine. But also this would give economical potential for the countries that are hosting us right now. And I'm going to make a bridge to Juha later on. Of course, Europe gives a lot of cash assistance and other assistance, of course, for that. Oleksandr, how big are our losses in terms of unreceived, let's say, taxes or unreceived in future taxes because of Ukrainians who have left? Or this is an opportunity for us? And what is this opportunity?
Well, it's definitely an issue. I won't say it's an opportunity. So it's an opportunity for us to prove that we care about them and to create the conditions whereby we can bring them back. In terms of losses, I'm not sure we have this specific statistics, like how much are we losing for them not contributing to the economy, but I can tell you that the latest data, you mentioned that the 4 million people, but actually it varies. So I have a data that at least 7.8 million still stay abroad, although there is a little controversial calculation that based on the mobile operators data, it's roughly 4.5 million. So maybe some of them drop the Ukrainian cell phones, but still stay abroad, right? So this may be the case. But we know that the economy is definitely suffering because sometimes the best people are leaving, the most qualified people are leaving. And we had the gender equality statistics that a lot of qualified women left, and they were one of the motor drivers for a number of industries. So it is a big issue.
Do you know the industries that are hurt the most?
From the people?
From the Ukrainians living abroad, specifically women.
Well, I don't have this data, I'm afraid, but yeah, no.
It's okay. We can dwell to this a bit later.
Yeah.
That would be, of course, interesting to understand that and how you want to tackle that.
Well, as I told you before, we have this grant support program, which we really count on enormously. So after we set it up, we got more than 14.5 thousand applications for obtaining 3.3 billion hryvnias. Again, as I also mentioned, we're in the scarcity of budget. We're in a huge budget deficit that we're trying to bridge every month. And these numbers that at least $3 billion is the budget deficit for Ukraine, that we're looking to bridge from different sources, including the trust funds that are being established and the donor support from both EU, US, and the IMF. Well, out of these 14.5 thousand, we managed to satisfy only 2.4 thousand of applications. So a lot of them still remain unsatisfied. And these are the people who are eager to create the jobs in Ukraine. So if we support them, we'll see the immediate effect that the jobs will be available. And so we really count on re-immigration. So the thing that you mentioned, unfortunately, this is not the best time in winter now, because you know that since our grid and the electricity infrastructure is being suffered, it's probably not the best idea for like people massively to get back in Ukraine now, but starting from spring, we really count on them to be back, and we really anticipate and envisage that this number is going to grow starting from March. For these grant support programs, we're actively looking for the sources. So we also have the special accounts open to the National Bank of Ukraine that can actually receive the donations, direct donations from individuals, corporations, just specifically to be sent for these grant support programs, which will be adding value, which will be adding jobs. We're also working closely with international development agencies and organizations, institutions such as USAID, KfW, GIZ, EU for Business. They are also giving grants actively, and we are actually promoting these grants through our communication channels. And we will be partnering with them soon. Well, we will be redirecting the sales funnel that we created through this program. We'll be sending those guys who didn't get the support from the state because of the budget scarcity. They will be able to go and seek for this support from these institutions and organizations.
With budget scarcity, how much money monthly do we need to ask from our donors and allies?
Well, the recent estimate was at least 3 billion a month. 3 billion.
At least 3 billion.
Yeah,
that's just to keep afloat?
Yeah, this is just the salaries, the social payments, that. So this is just like eating money. So it has nothing to do with the recovery or with economic development, unfortunately. So it's the 36 billion a year, which is a massive number. It was reflected in the state budget that was adopted recently in the parliament. The sources for this budget deficit bridging, like probably the most obvious ones that are currently being discussed is the trust fund of the World Bank that is trying to raise funds from different sources. I know that EU in Berlin, they actually declared they will be giving the money separately, but this is also good. We don't care how it's being channeled through. I know that the World Bank's plans initially were to raise the 36 billion for the bridging of the budget deficit and at least 18 billion for the immediate reconstruction efforts for the next year. The second component is a little more complicated because the deficit bridging is sort of like easy to explain. While the second component, I think that the donors would really want to make sure that we have the proper list of projects, that they were all well argumented, that the platforms that will be spending the money are actually accountable, transparent. That's why I think that the World Bank is actually one of the most prepared, because they already have the footprint in Ukraine, they have a track record in it, they have the infrastructure in place, they have a procurement platform that's proven to be very successful, like for instance, Ukrzaliznytsia, Ukravtodor, a lot of like different SOEs were already using the funds of the World Bank through this procurement platform, and that was pretty good and transparent.
Is this the money we have to return, or it's just a gift?
No, that'd be grants, yeah, and a separate track which would more deal with the economic development is using the leverage of the export credit agencies through all over the world. This is a win-win situation, because we understand we also need to offer something to our partners rather than be just asking for the free money. This is a good case with ECAs, because ECAs are normally supporting the businesses in their countries of origin, like supporting the manufacturers or contractors. We have really good programs with the UK, where UK Export Finance has dedicated 3.5 billion pounds as a limit for Ukraine. We're going to have a conference for the recovery in France, where we know that BPI France will also dedicate at least 2 billion euros for these programs. DFC from US, US Exim, they're also quite active. DFC is also ready to support Ukraine. Private sector, US Exim will support the sovereign sector. This is like, these are also instruments that enable us to borrow much cheaper funds and much longer funds.
Understand.
This will be, we will have to repay these, but at least the rates will be the minimum. Of course, the rates globally are growing, unfortunately, but at least these will be like the margins over the variable rates like Euribor and LIBOR, who we hope it's going to drop at least in a year and a half, 2 years. And in the course of the loans that will be borrowed for 14, 15 years, this is not the worst case. So.
Thank you for very detailed analysis and knowledge that you're sharing. I'm very, very happy to see that you represent the Ministry of Economical Development. Really, thank you. So I'm building a bridge to you, Juha, over here. So we went from understanding how many Ukrainians have left Ukraine, what is the cost of that to Ukrainian economy, but also what is the cost of it to European Commission and Europe in general. This is what I want to ask you, because out of those 7 or 4 million, let's see, this number somewhere there, cash assistance is needed for many of those as well, and other types of assistance like housings and everything. And I know that governments of specific countries are helping it by themselves through the grants from European Union. And I'm curious, what's your take on that? What's your overview of the situation? How is this going for Europe?
We have many instruments that are at play in supporting Ukraine, and I'm representing the humanitarian aid branch and the civil protection branch. But in terms of bigger EU support, of course, macro-financial assistance has been the biggest one, 9 billion euro this year, and I hope there will be an agreement next week also to provide more. There have been funding through the European Investment Bank, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So the humanitarian funds that we are providing, they are very big considering the humanitarian budget, but the bigger money is elsewhere. Military assistance as well. I mean, this is something that I would have personally never considered possible before this war started. We in the EU, we were always very conservative about our military spending, and now, of course, this has started a completely new era for the EU as well in providing military support, and it's one of the important elements of our assistance to Ukraine.
If I may take where are you residing right now? In Brussels, here, somewhere in Poland, or in Helsinki? Where are you residing?
I am residing in Brussels, but for 25 years I've been a bureaucrat in the European Union, and before in Helsinki, in Finland.
Understood. So it's a personal question then, in a way. You've seen Ukrainians, I guess, in Belgium as well, who have fled the war, and I guess you've been in contact with many of European Commission units and departments who are dealing with Ukrainians abroad in Europe. So the question is the very personal one, on the humanitarian side of this. How do you see how well, if well could describe it, countries are helping those Ukrainians that are in need in their countries, or they were in need in their countries in the beginning of the big war?
I think there's been tremendous support within EU member states. I have many friends who have been personally supporting. Some of them have been housing Ukrainian refugees as well. So I think there's widespread agreement within the EU member state that support is needed for those who are coming from Ukraine as refugees. I mean, the energy crisis is there for the EU as well and for the member states. So my hope, and I think everybody's hope, will be that this, let's say, welcoming attitude and support for Ukrainians in the EU will continue. I'm personally convinced that it will, but of course we need to see. I mean, it was interesting what you said about let's say sort of enduring over the winter, and then receiving people back to Ukraine after the hard winter is over, and basically giving their contribution to the economy and so on and so forth. I think if we collectively manage over the winter, then it will be very good.
Thank you for sharing that. I was thinking of that as well, that it's wise, I guess it's wise, not to overload the energy infrastructure in Ukraine, of course, and be more safe on the safer side while it's possible. Serhiy Leshenko, coming back to you on the lessons learned for yourself and Ukrainian railways. So you've shared the data on the specific achievements in this dire time that you and your organization had, and I'm curious of the lessons that you could share with the audience here. What were your solutions or specific decisions or ideas that really got implemented and you are very happy with those, and you can share with the audience?
Yeah.
Please.
By the way, about energy infrastructure, railways also suffering because of the shelling of energy infrastructure, but we have plan B. This is diesel locus, so we always running in schedule or with small delay, despite all shelling. And the achievement I would like to share is relevant to the situation. Since the war started, Ukrainian railways implemented big anti-corruption program. What is the area of misconduct in railways? Of course, this is procurement, which was always a little bit criticized by investigative journalists. Sometimes it was with some grounds, sometimes it was without, but we started to procure diesel fuel directly from producer. There are two big companies which are supplying diesel fuel to Ukrainian railways. One of them is Polish Orlen, and we very much appreciate this contact with our Polish counterpart. Another one is American producer ExxonMobil. So almost 99% of our needs in diesel fuel are covered by these two direct contracts. So this area was totally clean from any misconduct. It means that even despite the war, we can make progress with anti-corruption. The same with electricity procurement, which is also necessary for Ukrainian railways. We have direct contract with energy producer, Energoatom. So there is also now clean from any misconduct. About coal and natural gas procurement, we have this through Prozoro system for 100%, so there is no misconduct as well. So it means that with the goodwill, we can implement the best practices even in the days and weeks and months when the war is going on. This is another good example of progress we are trying to present the world and to ask the world stay united and stay with Ukrainian railways. And we have some good feedback. We were provided with 14 million grant from Switzerland for Ukrainian railways needs. We are looking forward to be more supported by our Western friends. And sometimes we don't need money, but we need more enthusiastic approach from our counterparts to implement our ambitious program. That is why we always very much, faster than our friends abroad, and we are calling them to be on the same speed level with us. Because for us, it's not just working time, it's also lives, it's also families, it's also our economic development. When we want to implement some, for instance, bottlenecks issues be fixed, we need it to be solved fast.
Is this the appeal to less bureaucracy, more speed?
It's about implementation. Which will let us to go faster by speed as well.
It's a great appeal. Thank you for that. Juha, I have a very small remark towards you. So I know we have shortage of time, but anyway, out of the lessons learned, and you said, I was so surprised that Europe was so fast on giving up the military aid, which we haven't done before in such speed. And I guess the speed of giving up the organizing the humanitarian aid and other functions is also increased. And to me, it is important to understand whether you, as European Commission and other organizations in Europe, could really learn from you right now how to increase the speed and decrease the level of bureaucracy, remaining institutional?
Yeah, some say that the European Commission is a bureaucratic institution. This is, of course, not true. Okay, that was a joke. I think speed is of the essence in a situation like that. And I mean, we in the Humanitarian and Civil Protection Department, we already have very flexible procedures to make funding available. So we have made use of every possible exception, every possible derogation to deliver assistance very quickly. And I have seen the same also in mobilizing money through the other instruments. So, of course, there are some legal constraints about the use of money, but given those legal constraints, all possible means of flexibility and expediency are being used. And one thing about lessons learned, I think what this has taught to us is how important it is to coordinate with the authorities. I mean, this has been of the essence. We have had very good coordination with the Ukrainian authorities. They are indicating us, and they are indicating to the humanitarian partners what the real needs are on the ground. And this has been tremendously helpful, and this is something that we absolutely need to continue.
Thank you, Juha. In the end, I want to summarize in a bit before I give Oleg a chance to have an appeal to all of you. So the panel is called Current Situation in Ukraine and the Human Cost of War. So what we've discovered together is the actual human cost of war. We've seen the data on how many children we've lost, on how much of economy is ruined, and then we saw the sectors of economy that were ruined the most, and the IT that is booming, and thanks to that we have more chance. So 30% and more of Ukraine economy is shrinking and will probably shrink more. We've lost around 7 million people from Ukraine physically, and they're probably right now abroad, and while the shelling of energy infrastructure is there, so we're not going to expect them coming back until, I guess, April when it's warmer, or March. So we're losing on that as well. European Commission has been doing immense work in assisting in humanitarian and civil protection work through absolutely immense amount of money that you spend on almost 17 million of Ukrainians that are in need of that. This is probably the biggest crisis that you personally seen, and that's what you shared with us. And the way how you tackle this is with a bit increased speed, with great coordination on the ground with the government. So this is the lesson that I guess we should all take as important one. Ukrainian railways were incremental in how Ukraine has dealt with A, evacuation, B, relocation, and C, transportation of goods. And the lessons learned is that speed that you have and 24/7 resilience is super important, and this is something that you also expect and want from the partners abroad. There's a lot of work to do, of course, and what I'm hearing is that volunteering effort is important, and you have to give it space. You have to give it space because it creates more capacity, great coordination, great, of course, and probably love towards your own country, and respect to what you do and to the countries that you want to help. So this is how I want to summarize it. And Oleg, please, your appeal to the audience in the end, and we're going to finish.
Dear friends, so actually you've heard like what is the cost of defending democracy and our common principles and values. And of course, that would be much higher if we didn't have effective coordination and cooperation between the government, between civil society, and with our partners. And actually, that's why I'm asking you, please use this opportunity, being here. Now you have experience, now we've got experience. We have shown the transparency and openness to you, and we are eager to cooperate and to talk and to share the experience. So now with this experience, let's do even better. Let's make it with a higher quality, actually, because what you're doing right now is just your leaders in all your fields. And actually, it's your example is showing and bringing the information to the other. What we have also learned that sometimes when you cannot reach some government or some areas, you are asking your partners to do that. And sometimes, when you cannot reach the government of the other country, it's the civil society who is making a pressure. We could recall the situation with the transit from one of European country to Belarus, and we have managed to stop this transit of all these goods, medicines, food for Russian soldiers via Belarus, just with your help. You were first, and then the government was able, and Brussels was able to make amendments. Let's call it this way. Nobody would believe that we will start receiving modern weapons. And it's just because of our joint position. So please, let's stay together. Let's communicate together. Let's send these signals and work with our friends. Because if you would ask me what we need weapons. The second, weapons. The third, weapons, of course. And then we need financial support. Then we need sanctions, tough sanctions, and staunch position. Because actually, sanctions are working. And those disinformation pieces that no, Russia is not hurt by sanctions, that's not true. That's not true. That's why international solidarity is the main for us. And everyone, all of you, are doing a really important work. So thank you for being here, and please, let's do it even better. Because after we win, we should gather again and coordinate how to rebuild and build prosperous and even better country, because we need to show and to prove once again that when you are fighting for democratic principles, for future of your children, you will win. And no tyranny can take lives and territories of free and democratic countries. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Oleg. Thank you, panelists. Juha, Serhiy, Oleksandr. So we're finishing this panel right now. Thank you so much.